Hello everybody and welcome back to the Maniacal Mini. Let me start today's episode by saying thank you if you already are a subscriber and a supporter of this channel. If you are not and you enjoy this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribe. I am trying to shift my focus into this becoming my main gig, so every little bit of your support definitely helps. That being said, we are working on a first episode of our terrain series. This will be an ever-growing, expanding series that will be added to over time in between our regular tutorials. With the new Warcry set that is about to drop, that is going to be the focus of a few videos coming up in the future with that beautiful terrain that they are releasing for it. So with that being said, we're going to start out with the Garden of Morr terrain set because I have two of them and I plan on building a board with them. So I am going to make a tutorial video on how to paint it. We are going over a zenithal highlight, which is white ink over a black primer, and we're going over that with a Basilicanum Gray contrast paint. We will pick it up in just a second. So now we're going to move into a little bit of a light dry brush that is going to be Fenrisian Gray over the wall. Try your best not to hit any of the skulls and skeletons. We don't want to throw off the underlayer for our ink later. So with these pieces in mind, I'm trying to eventually lead to building Warcry boards that hopefully we will get to videotape and do tutorials on a little bit later. I have a few sets that are just sitting around with this new Warcry set that'll just add to it. So to free up some space, we are going to start working on as many as we can. So now that the dry brush is almost done, we'll pick it up in another second. I'll let you guys finish watching that, and we will come back to it in a minute. So with the wall finished for now, we're going to start working on the skulls that are all over the place. For that, I'm using the sepia ink, which is my go-to for base on bones. It's just got some really rich tones, and the highlights all the way down to the shadows add a very realistic and natural look. We are going to go over that with a quick highlight in a second. I'll pick it up there with you guys when we get to it. So we're moving into that highlight of sun-bleached bone. This is a color from Green Stuff World. This is just going to add a little bit more richness and variation to the skull. I just wanted them to pop a little bit more, especially since we're going to be darkening down everything a little bit later on with those weathering steps. Anything that we can do to help those pop a little bit later on is definitely beneficial in my eyes. So we're going to pick it up in just another second. Now we're going to start picking out the roses that are along the top as well as the sides of this wall. For that, I'm going to be using Blood Angel Red contrast paint. It'll give this really beautiful red tone that we're going to actually build off of with some Wild Rider red in just a second. I'm also going to be using this highlight step that we're going to do in a minute for two purposes. That is going to be giving another layer of protection for when we come back in with weathering later. Red has this tendency to really wipe off very, very easily. So I kind of want to avoid that. And the best way to do that is to layer up as well as protect it with a little bit of matte varnish. I don't show that step, but it is going to be in here right after this highlight stage that's coming up. And we'll pick it up from there in just another minute. So this is going to be that Wild Rider Red highlight step that we talked about. For this step, my only recommendation is keep your paint really thin. Don't overload it on the brush. You can clog up a lot of the details on these roses very easily. So just go nice and light, couple of layers if you have to. Keep it almost to like a glaze consistency. That'll really help you out. We just want to add a couple of pops of highlight on all these roses for the two purposes, like we said, a little weathering later on, and it does help the tones and color variation. So I'm going to start moving into the foliage that's all around, and that is going to be with Creed Camo Contrast Paint. This is another one of those paints that just works so well over a Zenithal Prime, because when you use it on foliage especially, it just adds this super realistic and rich tone to it. It makes it look so nice, and you don't really have to do any further steps from that point, which is really nice. You know, anything to save a little bit of time and to make it look as natural as possible. So we're gonna pick it up in another step in just a few minutes. So I'm going to start moving into my metal colors now. The first one is going to be Sycorax Bronze. That's going to be used on all the plaques that decorate the wall. I went with bronze because when I get to weathering later on, bronze gets a very natural weathering look compared to some other metals, which allows for a lot more tonal variations in the rust and oxidation. It adds these really, really cool effects and, you know, bright pops of color that we definitely want when we're going for more realistic, dirty, grimy, rusty kind of applications. So we'll pick it up with another metal in just a second. My second metal color is going to be Iron Warriors. That's going to be for the banding that's underneath this skull. You can see I'm painting now. There's also a metal banding that goes through the doorway. There is the gate itself that's going to get the Iron Warriors, as well as these little spikes that sit on top. If you're looking for a different kind of metallic, but similar. You could use the Iron Hands Steel is another really, really good color, and they both hold up to weathering really well in the later stages and steps. So I highly recommend using one of those other two, but there's plenty of other paints out there, so obviously you don't have to use any of the paints that I described in this video, but you know, whatever makes you guys happy and whatever keeps you going through it. So we'll pick it up in a second. Okay, so we're moving into our second act now, which is the weathering stages. We are going to start out with AK Interactive's Dry Earth texture paint. They have an amazing line of texture paints. I highly recommend everyone at least try one of them. I know that Green Stuff World has a lot of good ones as well. I'm not partial to either. AK Interactive to me comes off a little bit better. It comes off looking a little bit more natural, but Green Stuff World I know has a lot of really good selections. So whatever one makes you guys happiest with the outcome is obviously what we want to do. So whichever one you guys decide to use, you know, stand by that. We're just going to be using a lot of AK Interactive products, so this is definitely one that I highly suggest having. I use this on a lot of bases and a lot of other things, so it's definitely very versatile. So this is going to be a two-step streaking stage. The first one is going to be streaking grime. That's going to be coating the entire model. Everything that's not metallic is going to get hit with that regular streaking grime, and we're going to come back through in just a second with the other step for this. That's going to be a different streak color, so we'll pick it up in just a second. So for the second streak, we're going to be using rush streaks, and this is going to be over all of our metallics. This is just going to set up the rusting stages a little bit later on with more variations in tones of the rust. Just another little extra step to help add realism. I'm just going to use my handy dandy blow dryer here to quickly flash off the spirits that are in the enamel. And this is just going to help dry it a little bit quicker just so I can get to the stages of working it back off. And we're going to pick it up actually from that stage in just a second. So now I've grabbed my Q-tip with a lot of mineral spirits on it. I'm going to start working off all of the streaking that we put in the previous steps. Just be really careful in this stage, guys. You don't want to work off any of this hard work that we already put in by accidentally rubbing too hard and taking off some metallic paint or taking off, you know, some paint off the skull, some of the highlights off the roses. We did add a couple of protective layers when we did the rose layer and the skull layer, as well as that layer of varnish to kind of help protect, but still be a little bit careful. As we work into this next stage, this is going to be the AK Interactive corrosion texture. I'm going to be putting this sparingly all over the iron gate, as well as a little bit on the inside of the banding, a couple of spots on the bronze, but not too much. I'm only hitting, I want to say like 2 or 3 different plaques. This is going to set up the rust stages a little bit later on, so we're going to come back to this after it dries. We'll pick it up from the next step in just a second though. So while that corrosion texture dries, I'm going to add a little bit more variation to this stonework on the wall. I'm going to bring in some AK Interactive moss deposits. This is going to leave some really green, like dulled green mossy areas to the actual wall itself. It'll add a lot of variation in color, which will look really natural and nice. We're actually going to hit that up another level in the next step. That we're going to be working into in just a second here, and that's going to be with some AK Interactive moss tufts. These are just little moss patches that have this really like fuzzy feeling to them. We're going to be sticking them in very select patches through the stonework wall and the floor. And now we're going to actually start going into our gamut of rust colors from Green Stuff World. So now that that corrosion texture has dried, I'm going to hit, this is going to be the most color stage. It's going to be that dark rust. This is pretty much going to coat everything except for a couple of spots of the iron itself, but pretty much all over that corrosion, all over the gates itself. We want that to be the most variation in color. That's going to be our solid one. As we move into later variations with the medium rust right now and the lighter rust and orange rust after this, we're going to start working in more select patches, going lighter and lighter with where we choose to place them. As you can see now, you know, I'm just touching over those super corroded dark spots. I'm going to be working on those corroded areas the most as we go through this. So we're going to pick it up with the light rust in just a second here, so you can see where I'm placing those and just how much I'm using. And we're also going to do that with the orange rust in just a second. So I'm going to let you guys finish watching this, and I'll pick it up when we reach the final stage of our rust process. So for the final stage of the rusting process, we are going to just bring in that Green Stuff World turquoise oxide. This is just going to be used on those bronze areas. This is going to streak down really nicely. It's going to look really, really cool. It's going to add that variation in color and just those pops of blue that look really awesome against some bronze. And that's actually going to be it for the steps on this one. I'm not going to add any further steps until I start building this actual board. I'm going to hit it with some pigment powders and, you know, some more texture paints. But thank you guys so much for checking this video out. I really appreciate the love and support. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye.